if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Thank you.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Within a decade, crypto and blockchain technology will be the 12th sector of the S&P.
Bitcoin doesn't have any value in and of itself. It's not backed up by anything.
Roughly a coin, average price of $30,700. Spent about $4 million on it.
Is that we are not buying this dip because it's not a dip.
After being completely and utterly dumped on and dumped inside of for the last year, is it really possible that the most famous Moonboy pattern of all time has the juice to bust through the caboose of the baby bears? One thing is for sure, this is going to be big. Right now, Bitcoin is potentially setting one of the most truly mind-boggling, life-changing, world-ending events that we have ever seen for at least the last 5,000 years. And what's even bigger than that is something literally so big that you just won't even be able to understand it. Absolutely time-sensitive alerts. And without any further ado, let's continue to get dumped on big time. But first, with Bitcoin's chart right now, we have, at this very second, continued to stay right around that $16,000 level. But there's some very important things going on here. So we see a $12,000 price target, see a massive buy wall here set up over the last few hours. A guardrail, if you will, bid at about $12,000 per Bitcoin could ultimately be what protects the market should a major capitulation occur over this coming holiday period for the US, the Thanksgiving holiday period. Over 300 million in Bitcoin bid liquidity between here and 12K, between 16 and 12K. Right here, the $70 million buy wall could be a guardrail for the holiday weekend because there's a lot of speculation on a grayscale announcement or maybe something else. Continued FTX Contagion news, which we're pretty much seeing almost every other day. Regardless, they're quoted here as saying, always keep an eye on new, gigantically fat buy walls. And that's what we see right here. And 12,000, guys, I mean, we talked about this yesterday as well. 12,000 is kind of like the mega, absolutely mega Dunkin' Crunch level times 10, times honestly even 15, maybe even times 20. That's how big this is. It's simply ginormous. And I struggle to even imagine something even more ginormous than this. If we take a look here, I mean, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because we did over the last few videos, but guys, 12K is just where the juice comes in. I mean, take a peek, take a squeak peek at this. 12K is just, okay, if we get down there, again, I actually got a comment just a couple of hours ago that I fully agree with, that I even mentioned a little bit yesterday as well, just that for us to get down to some of these levels, some very catastrophic things need to happen. But the only reason we're considering those catastrophic things to happen is because, you know, if there's anything catastrophic that's going to happen, it will be happening soon because we've seen the cascading from FTX. Again, there's a lot of theories or even evidence that they kind of caused a lot of what happened earlier in the year of 2022 in terms of Luna and even like Celsius and a lot of other stuff as well. So we've seen Contagion, we've seen all of this, but for us to get down to 14K, let alone 12K, let alone even 10K, we would need the worst news imaginable. So I personally think that it's not the most likely thing, but we're just preparing for it at this point, and we're kind of trying to factor it in, considering that I think over this week or next week, you know, the worst of the dumpiness could come to light because, again, we are actually seeing it slow down a little bit, some of this contagion, these contagion effects. With about 2 weeks ago when FTX basically said we're going to Turkey Town and we're getting absolutely slaughtered, a lot of stuff came out day after day after day basically saying, oh, we were involved, we're getting crushed also. And I think we're seeing that maybe slow down a little bit. But if not, then again, worst case, 12K, where the massive amount of support is. Everyone talks about 10K, and could we get there? Of course, nobody knows. It's absolutely possible. I mean, the world could literally explode 5 seconds from the time that you hear me say that. Literally anything can happen. But to get down to some of these levels, it would really take a perfect storm with another perfect storm, with another perfect. It would take a lot to get us there. So with that being said, we do have a lot of buy orders there, even before this guardrail. There's a lot of support there that would, in my opinion, support Bitcoin if we would get pushed that low. And before we jump into the chart as well, I think it is important that JP Morgan analyst there saying that, with everything going on, crypto is still crypto. I mean, all of the bad things that have happened are strictly because of centralized people that had too much power. And none of this was bad news for crypto. There was no issue with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin didn't collapse, it didn't crash, it didn't double spend or anything. Bitcoin's completely fine. So if you want Bitcoin to go up in the future, everything looked completely fine for that. The only issues we're having are with centralized people and the scammers that were running these centralized exchanges. But if we take a look also at Bitcoin, so what we see here, potentially we're forming some sort of double bottom pattern. Back on the 9th of November, we saw Bitcoin wick down all the way to 15.5. And just yesterday, we basically came back down to the exact same level. If we zoom in on this chart, you have to get really, really close. And even when you do get close, it almost looks like it came to the exact level. So we've had two massive buys right around 15.5 and right about 15.5. And so far we've gotten nice little bounces there. Now, is this a confirmation that we're gonna rally again, similar to last time? Absolutely not. But I mean, keep in mind, there was a lot of buy pressure there at 15.5. And if you look on that long-term chart that I just showed you, if you really zoom out and look at all the support, 15.5 doesn't really have that much. Okay, I'll draw a line where 15.5 is. It is where that white line is. And I mean, there's not a lot of historical resistance support. There's like barely any accumulated volume on the VPVR, yet it's still remaining very strong. With all this bad news, that is bouncing Bitcoin. So basically, if you think we're going to get news bad enough to where it's going to shatter this, which again, does not really have that much, and then push us all the way down to this level, which has so much historical resistance, insane levels of volume that were proven year after year during the entirety of the bear market, the last bear market that we're in. Well, you better believe that if we get down there, because that's the first thing, we need to get bad news that's bad enough to bring us down there in the first place. You bet your granny sweet tush that there should be some immense support there, okay? I mean, you know how long we traded at 20K, and you know how long we traded at 30K. All of that is nothing compared to how much support is built up around that 12K level, and 10K as well. I just personally think 12K is so remarkable that it's not even worth talking about 10K. Yes, like I said a few minutes ago, could we get to 10K? Absolutely, of course, we could. We could go down that low. All I'm saying is I would be extremely interested to watch if we get bad news that's so bad that Bitcoin gets below 15K and sets even more lower lows. If it got down to 12K, how quickly that would get immediately bought up. I would just be very interested to see that. At this point, we've gotten dumped on so much. I'm almost just interested in welcoming further dumpage. Like, come on, just push it as low as humanly possible, and let's see how strong the market is. Let's just, let's get it over with. But with that as well, we see the DXY today having a red day. As I said, and I showed a clip of it yesterday, back about a week ago, I said about 110 being a bounce level before maybe getting rejected. So doing something like this. So far, the DXY not looking amazing today, but the DXY, I personally still think could hit this 110-ish level before I think it would actually face a lot of resistance and maybe continue downward. In my opinion, this looks like a trend break of the DXY. This is the very first time in well over a year, I believe like 16 months or so since this super trend really started, maybe even longer, that the DXY has completely fallen out of this parabolic structure. And we were talking about this weeks ago as it happened, but now it looks as though the DXY is just completely out of strength long term. That doesn't mean that it's not going to have bounces. Like I just said, I think it could still easily go up to 110. But the stock market today not looking too bad, getting a little greenery as well. And if that would continue, then we know Bitcoin would benefit from that as well. But ultimately, Bitcoin is still holding this long-term pattern, which is remarkable as well, this gigantic falling wedge. Really, I think that this is no surprise to anyone. If FTX would not have collapsed about 2 weeks ago, Bitcoin would be well above $20,000 and following the stock market. Everyone agrees with that. It's exactly what Bitcoin was doing for well over the last year. It just so happened to be, unfortunately, that the second that the stock market pumped, crypto started collapsing from within. Second largest exchange, FTX, collapsed. So the thing is, because this contagion can only last so long. Yes, it's really bad what happened with FTX, but it's not going to affect the space 5 years from now, 10 years, 15 years from now. It's not even going to affect the space 6 months from now, in my opinion. Not even, in my opinion, more than a month or so even. Again, these are just my opinions, but exchanges collapse all the time. Everyone refers to Mt. Gox, where like 70 or 80 or even maybe 90% of Bitcoin at the time was traded on Mt. Gox. Now we have millions of options where to get it. FTX collapsing, did it hurt the space? Absolutely. Does it matter long term? Literally 0%. It does not matter at all long term. It doesn't even matter like midterm. I would argue that as long as these ding-dongs that are CEOs of exchanges didn't have too much exposure to FTX and were pretty much scamming themselves and being degenerate CEO owners, then this should be very much so behind the space. But again, nobody knows for sure if there's anyone else going to come out and say, hey, sorry, we dipped our tip into FTX's pool a little bit too much. Again, that could happen at any moment, but I personally think it's more likely than not that a lot of that news is behind us. But again, I do want to say that we could still see over the next few weeks some players still come out and say, hey, we're going bankrupt. I'm sure you're aware of Genesis and everything. But as well, with that, Bitcoin is showing strength around 15. And there are plenty of indicators showing that Bitcoin can rally. In my opinion, at this point, there's only two things that really matter in the short term. Our exchange is going to keep collapsing, and like even the FTX hacker are going to keep dumping on the market. So fundamentally just crypto stuff. And also, is the economy, or should I say the stock market, is it going to have just even a little bit more relief? Because Bitcoin has a lot of catching up to do. Without the FTX disaster, Bitcoin would probably be around $22,000 to $24,000 minimum right now. And right now it's about almost $10,000 below those levels, around $7,000 or $8,000. So the stock market looks much better right now than it did a month ago. Bitcoin doesn't. Bitcoin looks worse than it did a month ago. So that correlation between Bitcoin and the stock market that was like completely correct 100% of the time for the last year, now is in that like very, very small amount of time where they don't correlate. If history is any indicator, they will start doing that again soon. And if that is the case, Bitcoin should have a move to the upside. Granted, as long as more CEOs of exchanges were not gambling with users' funds. Is absolutely time-sensitive alerts, and as well, for a limited time only, actually, if you just sign up with BITGET using the link specifically below, it takes 30 seconds to put it in an email and create a password. You receive $30 free as a welcome gift, in addition to up to $30,000 in deposit trading rewards. But $30 free simply by signing up below. Without any further ado, that's free.